Wild West, a land of opportunity, adventure, and danger. While the romanticized image often focuses on lone cowboys and vast landscapes, the reality was often far more complex and violent. The lure of gold, land, and freedom attracted not only settlers and prospectors, but also those seeking to exploit the lawless environment. This led to the rise of numerous gangs, some small-time outfits, others large, organized criminal enterprises that terrorized communities and challenged the fledgling forces of law and order. This paper will delve into the stories of some of the most notorious and dangerous gangs that roamed the Wild West, exploring their activities, their leaders, and their ultimate fates. It's important to note that historical accounts can vary, and the line between fact and legend is sometimes blurred. But these gangs left an indelible mark on the history of the American frontier. Perhaps the most famous of all Western gangs, the James Younger Gang, led by the charismatic and ruthless Jesse James, achieved a near-mythical status. Initially operating as Confederate guerrillas during the Civil War, the James brothers, along with the Younger brothers, transitioned into bank and train robbery after the war's end. Their targets were often perceived as symbols of Northern oppression, adding a layer of social commentary to their crimes, though their primary motivation was undoubtedly profit. Jesse James, with his cunning and bravado, became a folk hero to some, while others saw him as a cold-blooded killer. The gang's daring robberies, often carried out with theatrical flair, cemented their notoriety. They were masters of disguise and misdirection, often leaving law enforcement baffled. However, their reign of terror couldn't last forever. Internal disputes, increasing pressure from Pinkerton detectives, and the gradual tightening of law enforcement eventually led to the gang's demise. The disastrous Northfield, Minnesota raid in 1876 marked a turning point, with several gang members killed or captured. Jesse James himself was ultimately shot and killed by a member of his own gang, Robert Ford, in 1882, bringing an end to the James Younger Gang's reign. The Dalton Gang's story is a stark reminder of the allure and corruption of the Wild West. Initially, several of the Dalton brothers served as lawmen, gaining experience and knowledge of the criminal justice system. However, they soon succumbed to the temptation of easy money and turned to a life of crime. Their crimes ranged from train and bank robberies to horse theft and cattle rustling. The Dalton Gang's operations were primarily concentrated in Kansas and the surrounding territories. They were known for their audacity and their willingness to use violence to achieve their goals. Unlike the James Younger Gang, the Daltons weren't romanticized to the same extent. Their reputation was one of ruthless criminals, and their end was as violent as their career. In 1892, the Dalton Gang attempted to rob two banks simultaneously in Coffeyville, Kansas. The townspeople, alerted to the robbery, armed themselves and engaged in a fierce shootout with the gang. 4 of the 5 Dalton brothers were killed in the gunfight, effectively ending the Dalton Gang's criminal activities. The Wild Bunch, also known as the Doolin Dalton Gang, despite no direct relationship to the Dalton brothers of Kansas, was a loosely organized group of outlaws operating in the late 19th century. Led by George Butch Cassidy Parker and Harry Sundance Kid Longabaugh, the Wild Bunch became infamous for their train and bank robberies across the American West. Unlike some other gangs, the Wild Bunch often prioritized careful planning and execution over brute force. They were known for their meticulous scouting of targets and their ability to evade law enforcement. While they certainly engaged in violence when necessary, they generally preferred to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Butch Cassidy in particular was known for his charm and intelligence, often using these qualities to outwit his adversaries. The Wild Bunch's reign eventually came to an end as pressure from law enforcement intensified. Cassidy and Sundance Kid famously fled to South America, where they continued their criminal activities, though their ultimate fate remains shrouded in mystery. The Lincoln County War in New Mexico wasn't strictly the work of a single gang, but it involved various factions and individuals engaged in a bloody conflict fueled by cattle interests and personal vendettas. One of the key groups involved was known as the Regulators, a loosely organized posse formed to oppose the powerful cattle baron James Dolan and his allies. The Regulators, led by figures like Richard Dick Brewer and Billy the Kid, were initially formed to protect the interests of local ranchers and merchants who felt threatened by Dolan's monopolistic practices. However, the conflict quickly escalated into a cycle of violence and revenge. with both sides engaging in ambushes, shootouts, and even assassinations. Billy the Kid, a young and skilled gunslinger, gained notoriety for his role in the Lincoln County War, becoming a legendary figure in Wild West lore. The Lincoln County War eventually subsided, but it left a trail of death and destruction in its wake, highlighting the lawlessness and volatility of the frontier. While not a gang of outlaws, the Texas Rangers deserve mention in any discussion of dangerous forces in the Wild West. Initially formed to protect the Texas frontier from Native American raids, the Rangers evolved into a powerful law enforcement agency. They were known for their toughness, their resourcefulness, and their willingness to operate in harsh conditions. The Texas Rangers often operated independently, tracking down outlaws and bringing them to justice. Their reputation for relentless pursuit and their effectiveness in apprehending criminals made them a force to be reckoned with. While they were generally on the side of law and order, their methods were sometimes controversial, and accusations of excessive force and disregard for due process were not uncommon. Nevertheless, the Texas Rangers played a significant role in shaping the image of the Wild West and in establishing law and order in the vast and often lawless territories of the frontier. The gangs of the Wild West represent a complex and often contradictory aspect of American history. They were products of their environment, shaped by the lawlessness, the opportunities, and the social tensions of the frontier. While some gangs, like the James Younger Gang, achieved a certain romanticized status, the reality was often far more brutal. Their crimes caused widespread suffering and disrupted the lives of countless individuals. The stories of these gangs, whether they were motivated by greed, revenge, or a distorted sense of justice, offer a glimpse into the darker side of the Wild West, a time when the lines between lawman and outlaw were often blurred, and survival often depended on one's ability to navigate a dangerous and unforgiving landscape. The legacy of these gangs continues to fascinate and intrigue, reminding us of the complex and often violent history of the American frontier.